Hi everybody. One of the big mysteries of the Song of Ice and Fire series is about the prophecy of Azor Ahai, the legendary hero of Ashai and the Far East, who the Red Priests of R'hllor believe will come again, reborn with a magical sword, Lightbringer. Who will be the new Azor Ahai, and who will be his tragic bride, Nissa Nissa, whose life was sacrificed to create that magical sword? Well, what if I told you we've already seen that sacrifice happen? No, not Dany at Khal Drogo's funeral pyre. Before that. I believe we were told about our new sacrifice of Nissa Nissa in the earliest moments of this series, hidden in plain sight. The very original sin of our story is both the killing of Nissa Nissa and a blood betrayal that may have lit the fuse on a new long night. Before I start, I want to shout out David Lightbringer. He's one of the channels that inspired me to do this whole video thing. And while this video is about a new theory of mine, it builds on some ideas from the fandom in general and many of his videos in particular. He has hours of video about mythical astronomy and symbolism in A Song of Ice and Fire, so go check him out. Also, I'm going to try to make this relatively short version of this theory. Instead of going into great detail on all of the great theories that tie into mine, I'll just mention some so you can go look them up for yourself. Maybe someday I will do an epic video or full playlist with all the details, but for now, just the theory. First, let's start off with a little history. We hear of two legends from the far east of Essos related to the Long Night. The first is the Blood Betrayal, where the Bloodstone Emperor murdered and stole the throne of his sister, the Amethyst Empress. This betrayal supposedly caused the Long Night to fall. Second, we hear of Azor Ahai, the hero who ended the Long Night. He created his magical sword, Lightbringer, by eventually thrusting it into the heart of his wife, Nissa Nissa, sending her soul into the blade. The Red Priests of R'hllor tell of a prophecy of the return of Azor Ahai to end a second long night and save the world. Some people think it's Azor Ahai's killing of Nissa Nissa that is that same blood betrayal, and that the story has changed through the telephone game of time. Now there are two ideas here that are worth mentioning, as I will be referencing evidence to them later. First, there are great theories about how this blood betrayal, or the Long Night in general, may be the cause of the inconsistent seasons on Planetos, and about the parallels to the mythical history of Odin and the world axis that we see in that season change. Second, the Bloodstone Emperor and Amethyst Empress lived at the end of a series of emperors, or dynasties, named for a series of gemstones. There are great theories about how those gemstone emperors appear in Dany's Wake the Dragon dream, and about their role in the history of the East in general, and Ashai in particular. Bloodstone, by the way, is a green gemstone that appears stained with red. Stone that historically has been described as green, being stained with blood. While there's a lot to say, and a lot has been said about these gemstone emperors, let's see if we can't add our own new ideas about those gemstones. In our world, we find a gemstone parallel in the Old and New Testaments of the Bible. In the Old Testament, we see the 12 tribes of Israel. They divide into a series of semi-autonomous regions, and later 1 then 2 kingdoms. Aaron, the Jewish priest and brother of Moses, had a breastplate with 12 gemstones inset, each representing one tribe of Israel. Later in the New Testament, we see descriptions of these gemstones as foundations in a city in the book of Revelation, and symbolism like Jesus and his 12 disciples. I think through the use of these gemstone emperors, and in referencing these gems and gem colors in other places in A Song of Ice and Fire, George R.R. Martin is doing some symbolic parallels between the diasporas of the tribes of Israel and the great empire of the dawn, along with some other Bible symbolism. I don't want to get too deep into this now. I'm going to make a whole separate video on that later, I think. Back in our world, history likes to group familiar things, and 12 is a number we see quite often in science, history, and symbols. There have been symbolic parallels made throughout history of 12 numbered things, including those tribes of Israel, the months of the year, and the signs of the zodiac. In fact, the symbolic association between stones, months, stars, it carries through in our birthstones, stones for months. Okay, so let's talk about Aerys II Targaryen. I've heard some people talk about him symbolically as a dragon, or as Aerys, the god of war. But I want to talk about him as a ram. You know, a male sheep with long horns. More importantly, about him as the zodiac sign of the vernal equinox, Aries the ram. A ram who sits on the 0-degree line of the giant zodiac wheel of the seasons. Turning back to those tribes of Israel, if you look up what the Jewish month is that's best aligned with the zodiac timing of Aries, the sheep, you get the month Nisan. And if you take Aries II as Aries, you end up with Nissa Nissa. Not exact, but hard to ignore. Arguably the original sin of A Song of Ice and Fire, Jaime Lannister plunged his sword into Aerys Targaryen, a betrayal of his Kingsguard blood oath. A blood betrayal, you might say. That's right, I believe this stabbing, this betrayal, is our new blood betrayal we've been hunting all this time. The original sin of A Song of Ice and Fire is the original sin of Planetos itself, tweaked and replayed. But hey, maybe it's a total coincidence that the character, named the same thing as the zodiac symbol for the ram and the coming of spring, with purple or amethyst eyes, was stabbed by someone with gem-like green eyes, stained with red by this very act, who swore a blood oath to protect him. So let's look for any other symbolism. Well, Nissa Nissa was killed with Lightbringer, the fiery sword of heroes. Surely there will be some Lightbringer symbolism somewhere. Well, to throw more credit to David Lightbringer, as he's said once or twice, Lucifer means Lightbringer, which can also be variously known as Venus, the fallen star, son of the dawn. Well, tempting as it is, looking for a son of the dawn to look to Jaime's father Tywin, let's look to his knighting instead. Jaime was knighted fighting the Kingswood Brotherhood by Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning with his sword Dawn, a magical sword made from a fallen star. I'm not saying Jaime is Azor Ahai, or more specifically Lightbringer, yet, but we're getting there. There's a little more of Jaime Lightbringer at the end, and a lot more for another video, I think. Also, while it's more an idea for an Iron Islands video, just in case it seems like the Hebrew biblical translation thing is a coincidence, the Hebrew word for Venus, the Lightbringer planet, is Naga. But I digress. Okay, so let's look at the original gemstone that matches up with the Aries Nisan zodiac timeline to see if there's any symbolic Oh, it's a bloodstone. Okay, well maybe it's just a total coincidence that the amethyst-eyed king with a double-meaning name of Aries the Ram and Nissa Nissa and bloodstone gem symbolism was killed by a symbolic Lightbringer with green eyes and blood-staining symbolism paralleling a ritual that is worshipped by the followers of a fiery red god. Surely there won't be any sigil symbolism or symbolic fiery sacrifice to back that up. Any ram sigils? House Rampton has a sigil. Seems like a minor house. Maybe it was just added later in passing. House Rampton is a noble house of the Crownlands with a white ram's head and yellow horns on a field of red. Just like Jaime, the white of the Kingsguard covered in Lannister red and yellow. House Rampton was present at the Hand's Tourney in A Game of Thrones, and their lord was killed by Melisandre's men on Dragonstone. His sons were burned alive by Selyse, Melisandre, and the Queen's men during the Battle of the Blackwater. Okay, this is starting to feel like a trend. I wonder if there's any more Hebrew name parallels. The Hebrew month matching up with Leo the Lion is Arya. Well, that's a lot to unpack. Let's skip Arya Stark for now and see if there are any other symbolic parallels. We don't have to go very far to find someone named Ario killing someone named Aerys. Oh, and a Dane, fallen star, was involved in that one too. Oh, and Gerald Hightower's a bull, and that's a zodiac symbol. And Jaime's a twin, zodiac symbol too. George really does just like to hide in plain sight, doesn't he? So I may have been a bit ambitious by saying it may have caused the new long night. I mean, it's certainly what my gut tells me happened. And it started a symbolic 12-ish years later in 295, which is maybe about the time the others started moving. We first see them in 297, but it's implied that this isn't their first interaction with people. It's been building. So what does all this mean? Who is Azor Ahai? I mean, I still think a handful of people in general, and Dany in particular, but I'm starting to see Jaime as either another Lightbringer or that these are just separate things. History repeats in different ways, and George has long said that prophecies are more guideline than timeline. But it's a new angle on an old story, another thing George loves, and it always blows me away to find things George has hidden right under our noses. So I may have some evidence after all. Jaime's Weirwood Stump dream in A Storm of Swords has tons of imagery that, in the context of this new information, seems to fit nicely. It's full of symbolism that ties together this new blood betrayal with snowy, frozen-looking ghosts of his Kingsguard brothers, swords lighting the way and burning in frozen blue and white flame. In fact, there's enough that I think it's going to turn into an entire second video. If this first is called Aerys is Nissa Nissa, I think we'll probably call that Jaime Lightbringer. So if you liked this video, maybe like it. A comment or subscribe would be incredible. I look forward to seeing you next time. Happy reading.